Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Curran and welcome to my tote bag tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to sew the perfect beginner-friendly tote bag. If you've never sewn before, this is a great first project you can make. It would also be a meaningful gift for your loved ones. So, let's dive right in. In terms of materials, you can use anything with structure really. I'm choosing to go with a heavy twill and denim, but any medium weight material works as well. Here you can see me marking strips, which I will then sew together to create a striped bag front. I'm going to include timestamps down below so you can jump to any part of the process you need. For this tote bag, I'm using the pattern I designed and put together. It's available as an instant digital PDF on my Etsy page, so you can print it at home on US letter or A4 paper. I also have a video link there with specific instructions on how to assemble it. The pattern link will be in the description below. After pinning our tote front pattern lengthwise on the grain line, we're going to start cutting 4 pieces. I'd like to do more tutorials on this channel, so let me know down below what you guys would be interested in me covering next. So here we have successfully cut 4 body pieces. And now we're going to start marking the 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around the pocket piece, as well as the 1 inch fold down at the top. Now this next step is completely optional, but since I have a serger, I'm going to serge the outer edge. This will prevent fraying on the inside of the pocket once it is attached.
One-handed serging, super epic.
After serging, we now take the pocket to the iron and we're going to fold the sides a 1/2 inch inwards on either side. Then we're going to do the same with the bottom, and finally a 1 inch double fold down at the top. On the body piece we would like our pocket attached to, we're going to measure 5 inches down from the edge. Then, at a right angle to the side of the bag, mark 4.5 inches inwards. Then, from that point, 9.5 inches inwards. This will indicate where the top corners of the pocket should be placed to ensure it's central. After placing the pocket, start pinning. Starting at the corner of the pocket, edge stitch around the outside, sinking the needle and pivoting at the corners. Sew up to the opposite side corner. Now sew around the pocket inside the stitch line you just made about 1/4 of an inch, again pivoting at those corners. Flip your bag pieces right sides together. You will sew the pieces starting from the top edge at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You will have 2 sets of bag pieces. Here we are sewing around the outside. Now that we have both sets sewn together, we will start cutting wedges into the rounded corners. This will help the shape when we flip the bag inside out. Here, I'm trimming down the seam allowance even further to reduce bulk. Now I'm flipping one of the bag pieces we sewed right side out. I'm sliding the right side out bag into the one that's still wrong side out. You can see the seam allowance on the outside here. Now we're just lining up those seams and we'll pin all the way around the top edge along the path I'm showing here. I'm marking 3 inches down on the bag strap with chalk. This will be where we start sewing from. Now I'm pinning both layers together, making sure the seams line up cleanly. I'm also pushing the seam allowances in opposite directions on each layer. That helps reduce the bulk and gives you a much flatter, cleaner finish when you sew. Flip the bag over and repeat the process for the opposite side. Make sure you mark 3 inches down on those straps and then pin all the way around. I'm sewing down and around the straps at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, starting and ending right at that 3 inch chalk mark we made earlier. Just take it slow around the curves so everything stays even. We'll flip the bag over and repeat this for the other side. Now we're basically repeating that same process, sewing down and around the straps on the center section of the bag. Just start and stop right at the 3 inch mark again to keep everything consistent. But on one of the sides, we're going to leave a small opening so we can pull the entire bag right side out later. Just make sure to stop before that section so the opening stays clean. Here I am sewing down and around on the first curve. Again, stopping right before that 3 inch mark. So here's a close-up. I'm sewing down from that 3 inch mark for about 8 or 9 inches, then stopping to leave that opening. I'll repeat the same thing on the opposite strap so we can flip the whole bag right side out later. Alright, this is what it'll look like after you've sewn the top curves. As you can see, we have one side that is fully sewn and the other side has those two lines with the opening. Now you will have the fun job of pulling the entire bag through that small opening. And here's a time lapse of me pulling it through. Enjoy. When you're trying to invert the straps, I would recommend you to pinch from the middle and pull outwards, or try to get your finger in the hole and pull out. If you've followed all the steps correctly up to this point, it should look something like this. So the next step is sewing the straps together at the top. I'm pinning the two layers right sides together. And you can see why I left that 3 inch section open earlier. It lets me sew both layers separately. Once everything's lined up, I can take it to the machine. Alright, and here we are at the machine sewing the top straps together. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to drop a like and maybe subscribe if you enjoy this type of content. I plan on making more tutorial videos in the future and eventually launching my own course for even more in-depth fashion content. So if that's something you would be interested in and want to stay up to date on, feel free to follow me on my social media linked below. So once you're done sewing, this is how it should look. Your seam allowances should be in the middle, and you will repeat the process on the other strap. Alright, we are almost done with the tote bag. The next step is going to be to iron this seam allowance inwards 1/2 inch, and then we are going to top stitch the two layers together, essentially sandwiching the seam allowance inside. Here we are at the iron, and I'm just going to be working on pinching and rolling the outer edge of the bag in the sections where it's not raw, such as the hole or the top straps for the moment. So this will be good to flatten it out and prepare it for top stitching. Here I am ironing the top straps to make sure that the seam allowances are going different directions. This will reduce bulk. I find it helpful to take some chalk and mark the 1/2 inch seam allowance on the curve of the bag. When you're ironing it inwards, this will make the curve more accurate to the pattern. And the same goes for the top straps. Alright, as you can see, I have pinned the hole opening shut and ironed it. This way it is ready for top stitching. Now I'm working on closing the top of the straps. I'm ironing along the chalk line I drew, and once the seam allowance is inside the strap, I will pin it shut and iron over top of both layers, making sure they're lined up. As you can see here, I have pinned everything shut, as well as ironed around all of the edges, and now we are ready to begin top stitching. Starting from the top of the strap, I'm stitching about 1/4 inch from the edge and back tacking once I reach the point I started. Here I am sewing the final stitch of the tote bag, again edge stitching the top. And here you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The fully reversible tote bag is completed. If you want to make this tote yourself, the full digital pattern is on my Etsy, link in bio. And if you want more sewing projects and tutorials, make sure to follow me on all my socials. I'll be giving this bag away on my Instagram @Curran Creates, so be sure to follow me on there for a chance to win.